Namaste and a very, very good evening to all of you. I am pleased to inform you all that our guest for the evening, Shri GP Singh ji, has already joined us for Samvad today. We here at Samvad, sir, are truly, truly honored by your presence among us. My name is Nidhi Goswami, and I have completed my master's degree in international relations from the South Asian University. This is the 23rd episode of the Samvad Conversation series, and I would like to give a brief introduction about our initiative Samvad before we proceed any further. Samvad, as many of us already know, is an online students led monthly lecture series here at the South Asian University that brings together both Indian and international students in a free flowing discussion of ideas. Now, the very word Samvad signifies dialogue and discussion, which is an age old Indic way of learning and exploring ideas. And as a part of this lecture series, we plan to discuss Indian cultural history, diversity and its civilizational and international identity, which are topics that are usually left out in the present academic discourses. To be joined today by acclaimed Indian Police Services Officer Shri G.P. Singh ji makes our initiative truly worthy. Now, Gyanendra Pratap Singh, aka GP Singh ji, is a 1991 batch IPS officer of Assam Meghalaya cadre. He is the current Special Director General of Assam Police Law and Order. He is also the Director of Vigilance and the Chief of Anti-Rhino Poaching Task Force in Assam. He had previously served as the Inspector General in the NIA. He has worked with NIA for 6 years and in several parts of Assam and the Northeast for over 18 years. He has also served in the esteemed Special Protection Group, known to have led a number of operations against insurgent outfits, including the United Liberation Front of Assam, that is the ULFA. During the initial years of his career, Mr. Singh came on central deputation to the NIA in 2013. He had camped in Kashmir after the February 14th Pulwama attack, in which 40 CRPF personnel were killed when a car-borne suicide bomber rammed into their bus. He also proceeded with the trials in the 2007 Samjhauta Express blast, the Makkah Masjid, and Ajmer Dargah blasts. He also monitored the 2008 Malegaon blast case. Now, this introduction clearly establishes GP Singhji as a man who has always been at the beck and call of duty towards the nation. And this is just an outline of a very, very prestigious career of GP Singhji. I would also like to heartily congratulate him and the whole of Assam Police for bagging the third position among all states of India on the Smart Policing Index of 2021 conducted by the Indian Police Foundation. With this, we would love to hear from you now, sir, about the Assam's war on drugs, the evolution and the challenges lying therein. And you have the mic to you for 20 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Uh, at the outset, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak to this wider community of students from South Asia and the South Asia University student-led Samvad initiative. When we talk in terms of the drugs, first of all, we have to understand why this is important that action be taken against the drugs. As you are all aware, drugs is one of the major issues that the world is grappling with, and many of the countries, even the rich countries like North American and West European countries, have a major issue with reference to drugs. And abuse of drug is really a huge problem across the globe. And worse is that in many countries of Africa, Asia, and Southeast Asia, where because of the issue of drugs, uh, poverty is increasing, and also criminality in the society is increasing. There is a direct correlation between the usage of drugs and also uh, the increasing rate of crime. One of the very important, significant aspect of this entire concept of drugs is that it leads to uh, street crime, it leads to household crimes, which affect almost everyone. I have seen cases where there have been uh, fight leading to grievous injuries between uh, family members, husbands, wife, children, siblings, because of drugs. Then I have also seen cases where there has been spurt in street crime across the globe. This is a global phenomenon because of the usage of drugs and the demand of the desire or the requirement for money to procure drugs. So because of that, there is a spiraling cycle in which you need to commit crimes to have money, and then with that money you buy drugs, and then when you are drugged in that state of euphoria, you tend to commit bigger crimes. So overall, this uh, the impact of drugs is huge as far as the society is concerned. So it's a global phenomenon. Globally, there has been a lot of effort to control the problem of drugs. There is a specialized agency of UNODC, which is fighting for organized crime, drugs, and other things. And then almost every country has federal agencies and it has state police units which are really working very hard to contain this problem of drugs. In Assam also, we had seen this issue that drugs is a major problem. And when I had come back or returned from Government of India deputation to National Investigation Agency, I had this in my mind that this is one area where we would really like to work on. And then we started, in the initial days, we started working. As many of you would know, that was a time when there was a serious agitation going on in Assam for against the Citizenship Amendment Act. So we could not devote that much time and energy to control this problem of drugs at that time. And then we, step by step, we wanted to go ahead in this, but then COVID came in, there were lockout, and the entire police force was virtually utilized for COVID management in the state. Then once the first wave went down, we started working on it. And then towards the middle of this year, in May, there was a change in the leadership, political leadership in Assam. And Dr. Hemant Biswa Sharma took over as the chief minister. And he, in the first meeting that he convened with the senior officials of police department and the state administration, he identified certain areas of import as well as those which were going to be the defining features of his government. One of those was drugs. That gave us an added impetus, and we really started working on it. We already had some background information about this, and we had identified that Assam is used as a transit for drugs coming from the Golden Triangle area. Now, for those who are not aware of the Golden Triangle area is the northern side of the bordering area of Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, and a very small portion of Vietnam. So this is abutting China, the southern boundary of China. And this is the area which has traditionally been one of the most significant area of opium cultivation in the world. Many of you may know there are two major opium producing areas of the world. One is Afghanistan and second is this area of Golden Triangle. The Afghanistan area is Afghanistan, Iran, and parts of Pakistan, which is known as Golden Crescent. If you go back in time to 40, 50 years, this area, Golden Triangle, was actually the world's #1 production center of opium. But over the period of time, because of terrorism, insurgency, and the paying potential of opium, Afghanistan has now overtaken, that is, the Golden Crescent has overtaken the Golden Triangle as #1 area for production of opium. There are many other things which I would, over the period of time, discuss. Now, so this Golden Triangle was, again, going back in history, it was the second step of the opium production. Originally, opium was produced in the southern Chinese belt. Then Chinese, somewhere towards the end of 19th century, decided that they will come down very heavily with opium production and also drug addiction. So they took strong measures. However, because of the strong action taken there, this entire production as well as manufacture of the secondary drugs, it shifted southwards and came to the Golden Triangle area. For quite some time, and even now, many of the Chinese criminal dynasties control this trade. The general estimates made by several international agencies indicate that about 80% of the drugs produced in this area, that is the Golden Triangle, move towards Western Europe and North America. About 20-25% of the drugs are consumed, transported and consumed in Southeast Asia, South Asia, in China, and in Indian mainland. Now, we would concentrate only on the impact that it has on India. As far as India is concerned, these drugs which come from Golden Triangle area, they travel through the western side of Myanmar, the wooded area, the forested area of Myanmar, and then it enters India. In India, it enters through one of the bordering states. So when you look at the map of the world, you'll realize that towards the west of Myanmar, there is Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram. So these drugs have to first enter India and from any of these four states. Then from these four states, if it has to go to mainland India, then it has, because mainland India, as you many of you would be aware that mainland India is connected to the northeast through what is known as a 22-kilometer long, 22 kilometers wide Chicken's Neck. So it has to cross the Chicken's Neck, which is the border between Assam and Bengal. So it has to enter Assam. So whichever area it enters through, whether it's Mizoram or Nagaland or Manipur or Arunachal, unless it is consumed in those states, it would have to travel through Assam. So this is the significance of Assam as far as this drug trade is concerned from Myanmar and Southeast Asia. Now, traditionally we have been taking action against the drugs, and if I see the data of the last 5 years, in 2016, we had registered 382 cases against the people who were indulging in drug peddling and drug transportation. This figure this year, till 30th November, has gone up to 2081. So this is almost a jump of 6 times in 5 years. So this is the kind of action that has been taken in this year. If we also see the recovery, especially after the new government has taken over in the month of May, the street value of the drugs which have been seized in last 6.5 months stands at 322 crores. Now, this is the kind of action that has been taken by Assam Police in last 6.5 months. Now, we utilized our sources, we identified that what are the areas, what are the points through which this drug is entering Assam. So we realized that one is from Mizoram, second major area is from Nagaland. Then there is another crossing which takes place from Arunachal Pradesh. So these are the points on which we had added an intensive checking and information network was established in this area. And we also realized that Guwahati city, which is the which is the premier city or urban conglomeration in Northeast, that had become a center for transit point, basically because Guwahati is the place where the air movement, train movement, road, and even the river, they converge from various parts of Northeast. And then from here, it again goes to other parts of the country, including the river route which goes through Assam into Bangladesh. So Guwahati Police, under very able leadership of the present Commissioner of Police, Mr. Harmeet Singh, and Joint Commissioner, Mr. Parthasarathy Mohanto, made special efforts. So we have seen that in the last 7 months, major recoveries have been made at those points from where the drugs enter into Assam from the neighboring Northeast states and in Guwahati city. As I said, that the street value is about 320 odd crores. Now, another aspect of this entire exercise has been that we decided that if we have to take on this issue of drugs, I would call it issue instead of crime, you have to have a multi-stakeholder approach. Then you have to have multi-pronged strategy. And we also decided that it has to have an approach which we call it uh, as Team Assam approach, where every department has to be associated in this process. Now, if you look at the uh, issue of drugs, there are three major verticals. One is of demand reduction, second is of supply reduction, and third is of harm reduction. Now, supply reduction is what the enforcement agencies are directly associated with. So whatever is the supply coming into Assam, we have to stop the supplies, or we have to choke the supplies, or we have to reduce the supplies. So this is what we have been doing. We have been taking active help of various other agencies, state police organizations of other states, plus federal agencies. Assam Rifles has been helpful to us. Narcotics Control Bureau has been helping us. Intelligence agencies have been helping us. So together we have this approach that we have to reduce the supply as much as possible. Then second issue is of the demand reduction. Now, as far as demand reduction is concerned, there stakeholders become the people who are likely drug addicts or consumers, their family members, the society. This is where various other agencies like sports department, education department, social welfare department, all these agencies come together, and then they motivate the people so that the demand is reduced. Third silo or third vertical that I discussed about or talked about was harm reduction or threat reduction. So harm reduction, as you understand, is the harm that is caused by the drug. That is where social welfare department, the health department, and other agencies which are involved in drug addiction or providing the health facilities to the consumers, drug consumers. I have slight reservation for in using the word drug addict. So the drug consumers, these people are provided the medical support and rehabilitation packages, and also they are weaned away from this entire process of consumption of drugs. So this spectrum of these three things, demand reduction, supply reduction, and harm reduction, this is the approach that we have been taking for the last many months, and we intend taking it ahead. And with the kind of seizures that are happening, I hope that we would be able to make a major difference. Now, one more thing before I finish this initial part of my talk is that it is also important to understand that though I have spoken about the demand reduction, supply reduction, harm reduction in Assam, it's extremely important to understand that the consumption of the drugs that are flowing through Assam is roughly about 15 or 20% as we have assessed. Rest about 80 to 85% is actually going to the mainland India. And we have inputs that some of this does not actually end only in India, but it goes further ahead. Much of it or some of it may go to island nations, or some of it may actually be going towards West Europe and North America, whichever route the courier prefers. So this actually, this action that we are taking against drugs in Assam does not have implications only for Assam and Northeast, but it also has implications for the entire country and other parts of the world where this drug flow is taking place. So that's the basic thing about this action that we have taken. Further ahead, as you wish, we would discuss the entire issue. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now, briefly underlining your points, sir. So you very rightly correlated drugs with the street and household crime, the reason why it becomes such a social problem, and how almost all countries are grappling with it. You also explained to us how Assam cannot help but become geographically mired in the drug menace due to Golden Triangle and the Golden Crescent and the transit route that Assam provides. You mentioned Guwahati becomes a central point for drug transit, and only this Sunday, sir. We were following the Assam police on Twitter, and the Guwahati police has done commendable job. Only this Sunday they busted four drug trafficking gangs, and we congratulate you and the Guwahati police for that too. So you very well laid down the solution for tackling this menace by a multi-pronged strategy that involves a multi-stakeholder approach, uh, underlining the supply-driven approach, the demand reduction approach, and the harm reduction approach. So thank you so much. And so we at Samvad here receive questions from the interested audience during the registration process itself. And we already shortlist a few questions out of them to make our discussion more enriching and informed. So I won't be taking questions from the audience directly today, but I will be reading out to them whatever questions we have received. So
I'm
let's,
comfortable even if you have to take the questions directly from audience. It's not scripted at all, and since I've been associated with this entire thing for a long time, I can answer almost every question. Anyway, you can please go ahead.
right, sir, right. We need a whole of technological logistics for all of that. So,
Okay.
all right, sir. So, proceeding with question number one that has been sent by Samarth to us. So, Samarth asks that several high class drug cases have come into the limelight in recent months, and it seems that highly powerful people, including close ones of politicians, are part of drug cartels. Do people like them create obstruction in police investigation? What problems police force face while investigating high profile cases, and how do they deal with them? I'm sure many in the audiences uh, needs the answer to this question.
So uh, it's a very very valid question that would be plaguing the mind of younger generation, because recently I have seen that in the TV channels across the country there has been discussion about drug busts here and there, especially in western part of the world. Here also we have been facing this situation where uh, the upper class people, the social in the social circle, financial circle, have been involved in consumption of drugs. I would actually say that the, the that part of the society about which you were discussing are mostly involved in consumption of drugs, and they are really not involved in peddling and all that. Peddling is done by different sections of society. So in these cases, yes, it is a point that a lot of pressure is built on the police, especially immediately after the search. That is the time when most of the pressure is built up, trying to get the people out of the initial information or initial registration of case. But if you send a strong party, a strong team, and what we have been doing is that we have been, as a matter of principle, recording all such events. So from the moment the police gets into a particular house or a particular premise, we insist that the police should be carrying video recorders. And since there would be multiple teams, every team should have a recording, so that nobody at a later stage can question the motive of the police, or can say that these people were also there, those people also there, police let them off. That is one. Second very important aspect of this kind of investigation, I am not getting into what has happened anywhere in the country. I'm just letting the people know from my perspective, is whenever you have credible information of this kind, the investigation agency or the police agency or enforcement agency, whichever goes there, should always carry reputed independent witnesses with them. And generally, what we have been doing, especially when I was in the National Investigation Agency and we carried out many searches in such high profile places. So, what we used to do is that we would take people from banking sector or financial sector, or we would take people from, say, post offices or engineers who are locally available. We would call them at the last moment, request them to be government witnesses, and I have seen that most of the people agree with this. So if you have recording of the entire event, if you have reputed public witnesses, not the kind of uh, uh, the the stock witnesses that many police agencies carry with them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reputed local witnesses. Then generally these problems do not arise. And if you have recorded and if they are witnesses, at a later stage, even the rich or the powerful people cannot put pressure on you because everything is by then recorded and brought on the record. So that's something that yes, we do face this issue, but there are ways of handling it. And if the documentation is proper, I can assure the audience and the young students, if the investigation agency or the enforcement agency has done the documentation properly, then likelihood of these people getting scot-free from the court is almost impossible. Let me also take a minute to tell the viewers that the provisions of the NDPS Act, and there is another act called PIT NDPS, which is basically dealing with the preventive detention for the narcotics crime. They are very, very stringent. So, one, that it helps us, the enforcement agencies, but because they are stringent to the extent of almost being considered draconian by many, it casts an additional responsibility on the enforcement agencies and investigation agencies that they are not misused. That is a responsibility that is cast on each one of us. That is, I would almost say it is unethical or criminal if any one of us makes an effort to misuse the provisions of NDPS or PIT NDPS.
Right, thank you, sir. The whole nation last month had seen how important it is to have credible, independent witnesses, as you have mentioned. Sir, the next question we have by Preeti Goel. And Preeti wants to ask that it has come into recent observation that several criminal groups in India are using drugs as a means of payment. Drugs are also being used in place of cash or gold within deals with global organizations. There seems to be a parallel economy of drugs in the world. Is it possible to dismantle this economy, at least in India?
Well, what Preeti has said is partially true. The drugs is a major component of all kinds of or many kinds of criminal deals. What we have seen in Northeast is that, and again I would go because as part of the National Investigation Agency, I had also investigated or I was associated with some of the drug busts of on the Western sector. So what I have seen that at some point, these appear to be on ground, appear to be independent operations of terrorism, drugs, wildlife. Since I am also heading the anti-rhino poaching task force, so I'm aware of what is happening on the wildlife sector. But at the top, at some point, they all converge. So each one of them is either financing the other one or providing muscle power for this. So it may be so that drugs are providing the financial muscle power for the terrorist groups, and the terrorist groups are providing the physical muscle power, raw muscle power, to the couriers who are indulging in the transport or peddling of drugs. As far as finance is concerned, again, yes, it is a very, very important aspect. And globally, there is a concern about this. And in the entire spectrum of terror finance, the financing of terror activities using the drug money is a very, very significant part. In fact, only today I was reading that there is an effort to have a specialized dedicated cell for assessment of terror financing. The National Investigation Agency all had it for quite some time. Now there is a dedicated cell in the Ministry of Home Affairs and Government of India. Yes, it is doable. We cannot eliminate the use of drug money in the criminal activities and terrorist activities, but we can definitely reduce it substantially.
Right. Thank you. The next question is by Simran. And she asks that in recent years, a new phenomenon has emerged in India where drugs have been normalized and are being made part of the popular culture. Young people who are naive and ignorant easily fall prey to such a narrative. What role do you think civil society, including parents, play in dismantling this narrative? Shouldn't there be an awareness campaign for the same?
Well, I I personally feel that in growth of a child or in growth of an individual, right from the childhood to adolescence and then young adult, role of family is extremely crucial. Um, my first posting to Delhi was in 2002, and that was time when my elder daughter was 5 6 years and the younger one was maybe 2 years, and both of them were I got them admitted in school in Delhi, and subsequently they did their college. Now that was a challenge that even I faced every day, listening to the stories of drug abuse, culture of drugs in various schools, colleges in Delhi. So it was a challenge. So we decided that we would continue to take action against. We would continue to talk to them, and sorry, there's a call coming. I'll just disconnect it. Sorry, there was a call. So role of family is extremely important. Now, parents have to be aware of what is happening. Parents have to be aware. Parents have to be aware of what the children are doing. They have to be aware of the significance or importance of drugs. So all these things are extremely crucial. All these things are extremely crucial, and I think that the role of parents, grandparents, schools. Uh, I would also I would also say that I've seen in the smaller towns, even in the in towns of medium size, that the role of local clubs is extremely crucial in motivating youngsters not to indulge in consumption of drugs. So overall, it is a societal response that can keep the youngsters, especially the young adolescents, from this scourge of drugs.
Right. Thank you. So, speaking of parenting, your daughter Aishwarya Singh, she has cleared the Indian Civil Services, we have heard, and she'll be joining you in the Indian Police Services now. So, congratulations for that. You surely are a proud parent, I'm sure. Uh, so, sir, next we have a question by Parikshit, and he asks that several experts have claimed that the Indian anti narcotics laws have several loopholes which make it easier for criminals to get away with their acts. We are also aware of the presence of an excessive logjam in Indian judicial system. Does that create a hindrance in your job?
Uh, I would partially agree, not fully, that my experience of 3 decades of policing has been that criminals are always one step ahead of law enforcement agencies. So it's always like law enforcement agencies have to do the catching up. So whenever you see that the criminals are taking recourse to some kind of a particular activity, then you have to amend the laws, because you would never have this foresight or forethought as to how the society would change, how the system would change, and that how you can have the laws. So those loopholes would be there. But as I said, if you follow the procedural law effectively, especially in the entire scenario of drugs, if the initial part of the seizure of drugs or the search operation is meticulously recorded, and the entire process of connecting the drugs to the people is perfect, well documented, with independent witnesses and recording, etc., etc. And the procedural part of the drug laws is followed. It's very, very stringent. So you have to follow, otherwise you will fail on the procedural part. So if that is done properly, then most of the problems are sorted out. And what was the second part of the question? The first part was about the loopholes in the legal system.
So the second part is that we are also aware of the presence of an excessive logjam in Indian judicial system.
Okay, yeah. So now this is another very important point. Now you have to understand that we are a country of 1.3 billion. So we have limited resources as far as investigation is concerned, and similarly limited resources as far as trial of the cases is concerned. Whenever the investigation agencies get hyperactive, like we have been in Assam, now as I said, we were registering 5 years back 300 odd cases. This year we have already registered 2,100. So we have already an additional 1,700 cases. Now these 1,700 cases have to be investigated by the investigation agency, that is the Assam Police, but then they have to go for trial. So the courts would have those additional 1,700 cases. Now courts have not increased. The number of courts have not increased. So that problem, yes, it is there, but perhaps we need to have more courts. We need to have more sittings of the courts. And also if we can slightly expedite the process from the judicial perspective, that not too many delays take place, and I think we can really make a difference. But yes, his concern is valid.
Right. I'm sure Parikshit is satisfied with the answer. So next question we have by Sumit Das. Sir, in an interview, you had said that the state of Assam has experienced border clashes with neighboring states because of this issue. How is it so? Is this lack of cooperation between Indian states simply because of political reasons, or there is a bigger and more sinister force at play here?
Well, I would not say that the exact words used were that it was because of drugs that the inter-border clashes took place. It is not like that. What I had said was that in the border areas, drugs are an issue, and many of the people who are indulging in clashes are those who have vested interests because of the drug deals that they indulge in. So that was my observation, and I still stand by that. As I mentioned initially, most of the drug deals are taking place at the border points, whether it is with Mizoram or Arunachal or Nagaland or Manipur. From Manipur also it comes to Mizoram. So when you go in for intensive checkings and operations, then their efforts are definitely hampered. Their business is hampered. And when the business is hampered, what best way other than make the Assam police or the concerned state police busy by getting the two state police forces or the people into a state of clash? So police force diverts its attention from the core function of going after the drugs or criminals to sorting out this law and order issue that emanates out of the border clashes. So that is what I had said at that time, and I still believe that many a times, not only about drugs, but I have seen even in other criminal activities, whenever the situation heats up, criminals have a propensity of trying to make the police force busy in something else. So I stand by that, and I think I have clarified the situation.
Right. Thank you, sir. Next question we have by Indu Sharma. The state of Assam has been experiencing a major problem in the face of illegal immigration from Bangladesh. Do these drug cartels make use of this infiltration to bring in drugs in Assam? Why can Indian border fences, why can Indian border forces not stop this infiltration?
Well, it's a very interesting scenario overall. We have in Northeast, we have borders with Myanmar, then we have borders with Bangladesh, then we have borders with Bhutan, then slightly west of this we have borders with Nepal, and then Arunachal Pradesh has a long borderline with China. So we have huge international border in Northeast. Now, the major drug producing region of this area is the Golden Triangle, which I had mentioned. Now, Golden Triangle and Northeast is through Myanmar. India and Myanmar has something called Free Movement Regime, FMR. Now, this FMR extends to 16 years, if I'm not mistaken, where for 16 kilometers towards the two sides of the international border, the citizens of both the countries can travel freely without any document. Like they don't need a passport or visa or anything. Nothing is required. You can just simply go. So that is one aspect because of which there is an impact where the people do bring. Then Indo-Myanmar border is unfenced. So there is no fencing. You can actually cross from wherever you wish to. There are a whole number of river crossings. There are large number of crossings in the forest area and all. Now coming to the question of illegal migrants, yes, it has been a problem that has been impacting the entire Northeast and Assam for quite some time. There was a time when there was almost a free flow of people from Bangladesh. We have had at the time of partition, we have had flow of people from Bangladesh. Then after that, during the liberation war of Bangladesh in 70 people from Bangladesh into India. And subsequently after 71 also, there has been infiltration into India, most of it being illegal. Many of them, yes, have been involved in drug trade, but it would be improper on my part or incorrect on my part to say that drugs are controlled only by people who are of illegal migrant origin. That is not true or correct to say. But yes, it is a major cause of concern. There are people of suspected nationality who have been involved in this business of drugs, and we are keeping a close watch on any such movement so that it can be handled.
Right. Next question by Manish. And he says that it has been said that the Indian police officers are excessively burdened. Does that create a hindrance in your operations, especially since anti-narcotics is a specialized area? And I believe that the burden will be even more on officers working in that field.
Well, as I said, we have a population of 1.3 billion, and globally, it is accepted a standard that there would be about, I think, 221 policemen to each lakh of population. We have about 100 plus. That is a fact of life. We, for a very, very long period of time after independence, we were not a resource-rich country. It is only now that we have started feeling that we are resource-rich, or we have abundant resources to cater to the social needs and the needs of the society. So what has happened because of that is that the number of people in police and other social services sector, including health, education, has been relatively less. So yes, that is true. We have less number of policemen than what we would have expected or what even the international norms say. But then having lesser number does not mean that we abdicate our responsibility and say that we can't do it because we do not have the numbers. Here, I would like to say one thing. Through the youngsters with whom I am interacting, that it is also hugely important for the youngsters and the society to associate themselves in action against drugs. Information has to come from you. If quality information comes from people, then we do not need actually very huge machinery, then limited number of people would also suffice. What we have seen here in Assam, that through the social media platforms and the helpline numbers or the numbers that we have given to the people and email IDs and other things, information that trickles in to us is high quality and substantial. Large number of major drug hauls by Assam police have been made based on the information provided by public. In fact, I would say that almost 60 to 70% of the information is coming only from people. So people are our force enhancer, force multiplier. So if we have dedicated people who would inform, because ultimately somebody would know that drugs are coming. If they inform the police, then it's done. So that actually takes care of the shortage of manpower.
Right, that was a very significant message from you. Next question we have by Karan, who asks that there has been a long lasting demand for the legalization of marijuana. There have been reports that the government may be considering to decriminalize the possession of marijuana in small quantity. What is your take on this? Will that not make your job even tougher?
Well, as a police officer, I've always maintained and I have realized that we have to listen to the voice of the society. If the voice of society by and large says that no drugs should be declared as legal, then so be it. If the society by and large decides and through the democratically elected representatives and leaders decide that this would be legalized, so be it. I am comfortable with that. I have my own views about this, but since I am a serving police officer, I refrain from airing my views on that. Legalizing of marijuana is one aspect, and the quantity is another aspect. Already, there is a distinction in the NDPS Act on the basis of quantity, where the peddler, courier, and consumer are segregated on the basis of quantity or quantum of drug that is seized from their person. And many of these low impact drugs, if they are found in very, very less amounts, then criminal prosecution does not take place. It's more that it should be in terms of rehabilitative therapy and things like that. So already the provision is there. As far as marijuana is concerned, I leave it to the elected representatives and to the society to take a call on it. Whatever the society decides and whatever is the statute brought in by the parliament, we would implement that.
Right, thank you. So, sir, next, Nidhi Yadav wants to ask that the Indian intelligence agencies have reported that Pakistani security agencies are using drugs to destabilize India, especially in the border states. Punjab might be a good example of this. This shows that drugs issue is not just about the personal well-being of an individual, but is also harmful for the overall security of the nation. What is your take on this specific point?
Yes, what she has said is quite right. In fact, in the last couple of years, it has been very often seen that drugs is seen as one of the medium of bringing in or pumping resources into the terrorism, whether it is in Kashmir or in Punjab. The National Investigation Agency has investigated many such cases, and there is a need to further strengthen our systems. Now, the worrisome aspect of the last 1.5 or 2 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years, has been that there has been uh, transport of drugs on the western border using drones. That is something which is new. So drugs and weapons have been brought inside India using drones from our western neighbor. Now, these are the things which are significant technological developments. We have to prepare ourselves for that. As far as intelligence is concerned, yes, intelligence agencies have been doing yeoman service in giving quality information to the state police agencies, federal agencies, enforcement agencies. A lot of good work has been done. One thing that I would like to say is to all the youngsters who are participating today in this discussion is that good work often goes unreported. It's only the failure that gets reported. I have no complaint on that. Let the failures be reported, but good work takes place, and significant number of good work or significant quantum of good work does not come to public domain. So you generally do not know how much of good work or how much of hard work has gone in this entire process by the enforcement and the intelligence agencies.
Right, very well said. The next question we have by Kavya, and she asks that most of the drug cartels operate on an international level. We know about the Golden Triangle, and we have also recently seen how drugs are being imported from Afghanistan and Iran, as in the Mundra airport case. This makes global cooperation amongst nations extremely important to fight this menace. What has been your experience in this regard, and what suggestions would you want to give to policymakers for the same?
Well, globally, as far as terrorism and drugs are concerned, amongst the major countries of the world, there is unanimity that action should be taken. Drugs is number one priority. There is absolutely no difference of opinion that I have seen on the major countries of the world that the action should be taken very, very effectively. Terrorism, because various people have different definitions of terrorism. So there have been different perceptions and perspectives as far as terrorism is concerned. But with the drugs, I have not seen any country saying that we should not take an organized or effective action against drugs. That's not an issue. And as far as policymakers are concerned, well, they are governed and they are driven by what the society says. And I'm sure that they keep their eyes and ears open through their own channels and also through the intelligence machinery, and they would be taking effective measures. As far as the execution of those policies are concerned, we are all very well gelled. And here I have seen with various agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, there's absolutely full synergy between the agencies. There's absolutely no scope for any misunderstanding between the agencies. And when I was in Delhi, I had, because I was part of a lot of international groups also, that internationally also, as far as drugs are concerned, there is virtual unanimity on that.
Right. So, this is one of the last questions we have by Anas, and he wants to ask that a large number of misguided youth fall into this trap and are unable to get out of it. They become addicts, and even their families and society shuns them. Is it not wrong to penalize these people? Should we not be more concerned with their de-addiction and rehabilitation?
Yes, as I said, that even the drug policy and the national and the NDPS Act talks in terms of those who are consumers are to be treated at a different pedestal as compared to what the couriers, transporters, or the people who are actually involved in peddling and production, etc., of drugs. And as I mentioned in the beginning, mostly the governments have been taking a holistic approach. Again, going back to what I was saying, that it has to be supply and demand reduction by the enforcement agencies and harm reduction by the uh, multiple stakeholders of the government. So the health department, sports department, education department, all that. Yes, it is absolutely right. Those who are consumers are actually also the victims of the drug trade. So we should look at them from that perspective. He is very right in observing.
Right. Thank you, sir. And we're coming towards the end now. Amidst many messages you had for the audience today, before we bid adieu to you, do you have any message to give to the youth who have joined us today?
It's a beautiful world. Don't spoil it by either consuming drugs or being part of the drug trade. As father of two young girls, I can say that world is much more beautiful without drugs. And I would advise everyone, especially the youth, that you can actually do much more for yourself, for your family, for the society by being away from drugs rather than being in drugs.
Right. That was beautiful. Thank you, sir. And with this, with we come to the end of the discussion today. Very, very insightful and enriching discussion from you. Uh, but before wrapping up, sir, we have a little request to make to you, our team Samvad. So, sir, I'm sure serving the Indian police services for nearly 3 decades now, and that too with so many different security organizations of the country, gives you a unique perspectives on the state, the bureaucracy, and the politics as well. And I think we here at Samvad could quite benefit from those insights from you. And therefore, I take this opportunity to ask for your time and an evening of conversation, physically, not virtually, with the team Samvad as and when you visit Delhi.
Yeah, I'm actually not staying too far away from your university. I think you have a campus somewhere in Chanakyapuri,
Right.
and my house is right next to that in Chanakyapuri. I stay. one of those government colonies there. So whenever I am there, I would surely let you know, and we would definitely associate. And I would also say that, contrary to what most people believe, that's a perception that has been created. Indian civil services are a beautiful opportunity to serve the people of the country. So let us, based on perception, let us not hold a negative opinion. Most of us are working very hard to bring sanity into the system, keep the system working. And those of you who are interested should join, make effort and join the civil services. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Right. That was a very, very important message from your side. And regarding our meeting, sir, my team would get in touch with you regarding the very same and very soon. With this, my audience, we wrap up today's very, very insightful discussion with our guest for the evening, Indian Police Services Officer Shri GP Singh ji. And GP Singh ji, you have made this episode of Samvads truly memorable, and we have been empowered and encouraged to take this initiative of ours forward with more enthusiasm, with wishing to be joined by you in the future very, very soon. And thank you so much, sir. We have been truly humble. Thank you so much again. To my audience, thank you for being such a great audience. And I apologize for we had time constraints and I couldn't take more questions for today. But thanks again for joining us like you always do. Also would like to express my heartfelt gratitude for my team, Harshit, Parul, Nidhi Yadav, Shravani, Pavanji, and Vishnuji. All of you make a great team. Last but not the least, I feel gratitude for every person who has made this possible. Thank you so much again, everyone. Thank you, sir. And I wrap up today's Samvad. Until next time, take care and namaste.
Thank you.